Question 14. Which of these following complex numbers is equivalent to imaginary number I to the power of 3? You can say I to the power of 3. Note, imaginary number I equals the square root of -1. So which of these options is equivalent to this? This question is under complex numbers and it has a touch of indices. This is imaginary number I to the power of 3. Based on indices, we can break this down into imaginary number I to the power of 2 times I to the power of 1. Under indices, this is possible. This is to the power of 1, or you can leave it without 1 on it. To get this back, you can say imaginary number I to the power of 2 plus 1. You pick one of the i's, then you take 2 as the power, and this multiplication sign becomes addition at the power level. Then you add the power of the second I, which is 1, to it at the power level. So you have I to the power of 2 plus 1, that's I to the power of 3. To better explain it, you can have 2 to the power of 3 times 2 to the power of 2. That will give you 2 to the power of 3 plus 2, which is 2 to the power of 5. Note that the reverse is allowed in indices. That is, you can go from 2 to the power of 5 to 2 to the power of 3 times 2 to the power of 2 through 2 to the power of 3 plus 2. And same applies to this imaginary number I to the power of 3. The question says imaginary number I equals the square root of -1. Let's do this on the side. Imaginary number I equals the square root of -1. Let's write it again below. Imaginary number I equals the square root of -1. If you want to take it to the power of 2, that's I to the power of 2, you can square both sides. So you square this and you square this. With this, you have I to the power of 2 equals, the square cancels the square root. You will be left with -1. So I to the power of 2 equals -1. And with this information, you would solve this question. We broke down I to the power of 3 to I to the power of 2 times I to the power of 1 using the knowledge of indices. And I to the power of 2 is same thing as -1 times, I to the power of 1 is square root of -1. Since it's square root of -1, you can leave it as I. You don't need to change it from I to the square root of -1. You will leave it like that. That's just a normal thing to help you get one of these options as your answer. You can see in the options, you don't have square root of -1. So you leave it as I. Then you have -1 times I will give you -1I. It's just like algebra, like saying 1 times A is A, or 1A. 2 times A is 2A. Watch, you join the two of them together. Same applies to this. -1 times I is -1I, which is -I. So the equivalent of I to the power of 3 is -I, or -1I. And from the options, the answer is B. That's -I.